The next time it rains for 3 days straight, pay attention to what happens. You stay inside. You scroll through your phone. You make coffee. Maybe you complain about the weather. Maybe you look out the window and wait for the clouds to leave. Rain becomes an inconvenience, a delay, a minor disruption to a normal day. But for 300,000 years, your ancestors had no house, no weather forecast, and no guarantee the storm would end tomorrow. For most of human history, rain was not something you watched through a window. It was something you lived inside. And when the sky refused to clear for days at a time, the consequences reached into nearly every part of life. Food changed, sleep changed, social behavior changed. Even human culture may have changed. So what did ancient humans actually do when it rained for days? The answer is stranger than you might think. Let's start with a problem that seems obvious. Fire. When most people imagine prehistoric life, they picture a campfire, a warm circle of light, people sitting around it, stories being told, food cooking. But rain and fire are natural enemies. A heavy storm can turn a campfire into smoke and mud within minutes. And for ancient humans, losing a fire was a serious problem. For hundreds of thousands of years, creating a new fire was difficult, very difficult. You could not simply strike a lighter. You could not flip a switch. In many periods of human history, people spent more effort maintaining an existing fire than creating a new one. Anthropologists studying traditional societies found that groups often carried embers from place to place specifically because restarting a fire required time and energy. Now imagine several days of constant rain. Wood becomes wet, tinder becomes wet, everything becomes wet. The challenge was not making fire. The challenge was keeping it alive. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer groups have documented elaborate methods for protecting embers during bad weather. Hot coals were buried, covered, wrapped, transported, guarded. A surviving ember could mean the difference between comfort and misery. Because once the fire disappeared, everything became harder. Food was harder to cook, clothing was harder to dry, predators became more dangerous, night became colder, and suddenly a storm was no longer an annoyance. It was a survival problem. But here's what's fascinating. Rain was not always the enemy. Sometimes it created opportunities. Think about hunting. Most animals rely heavily on smell. When rain falls continuously, scent behaves differently. Tracks become easier to identify in mud. Fresh footprints stand out. Broken vegetation becomes more visible. Some hunter-gatherer groups have historically used wet conditions to improve tracking success. Rain erased old signs and highlighted new ones. A muddy footprint might reveal exactly where an animal passed only minutes earlier. In some environments, rain made certain forms of hunting easier rather than harder. But large hunts were often reduced during prolonged storms. Travel became slower, visibility decreased, animals sought shelter, people did too. And this created something rare: free time. Modern humans often imagine prehistoric life as an endless struggle for survival. Every moment spent searching for food. Every day a desperate fight against nature. The evidence suggests something different. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies repeatedly found that people were not working every waking hour. Far from it. When environmental conditions prevented normal activities, social life expanded, and long periods of rain were perfect for this. Imagine a group sheltering beneath a rocky overhang. The storm has lasted 2 days. Nobody wants to travel far. Nobody wants to risk injury on slippery ground. The fire is protected. Food supplies still exist. So what happens? People talk for hours. Stories are shared. Jokes are repeated. Children play games. Old memories are retold. And this matters more than it seems, because humans are unusual. We spend enormous amounts of time communicating things that have no immediate survival value. Myths, legends, dreams, stories about people who are not present. Stories about events that never happened. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner found that nighttime conversations among hunter-gatherers frequently shifted away from practical concerns and towards storytelling. Rain likely amplified this effect. A storm traps people together. It creates downtime. It forces interaction. And throughout history, some of humanity's most important ideas may have emerged during moments exactly like these. A long storm, a protected fire, a group with nowhere else to go. The rain outside, stories inside. Now here's where things get interesting. Because rain did something else. It changed the sound of the world. Modern people rarely experience true natural darkness or natural silence. There is always traffic, always electricity, always some distant machine humming. But during heavy rainfall in prehistoric environments, the world transformed. Rain masks sound. It covers small noises. It changes visibility. It creates a kind of sensory cocoon. Many anthropologists believe weather conditions strongly influenced social behavior because environmental awareness was so important. When the world outside became hidden by rain, attention shifted inward, toward the group, toward conversation, toward relationships, and relationships were everything. In modern society, survival depends on institutions, governments, banks, employers, police. For most of human history, survival depended on people, specific people. If you were injured, people helped. If hunting failed, people shared. If food became scarce, relationships mattered. A prolonged storm was not merely bad weather. It was time spent investing in the social bonds that kept communities alive. Some researchers describe human beings as a species that survives through cooperation more than physical strength. Rain may have strengthened that cooperation. Not intentionally, simply because it forced people into the same space for extended periods. But storms created another challenge. Children. Imagine caring for young children in a world without waterproof clothing, without insulated houses, without medicine. A storm that lasted several days could become dangerous very quickly. Hypothermia is not just a cold weather problem. Wet conditions dramatically increase heat loss. Even moderate temperatures become risky when clothing remains soaked. This helps explain why shelter became so important in human evolution. Archaeological evidence suggests ancient humans repeatedly selected campsites that provided natural protection. Rock shelters appear across the archaeological record, not because people preferred caves, because caves solved problems: rain, wind, cold, predators. A good shelter during a storm could transform an unpleasant week into a manageable inconvenience. A bad shelter could become a disaster. And here's the part most people never think about. Rain affects psychology. You have experienced this yourself. A cloudy week feels different from a sunny one. Your mood changes. Your energy changes. Modern studies suggest weather influences emotional states in subtle ways. Ancient humans were not immune to this. If anything, they were probably more sensitive. Their lives were directly connected to environmental conditions. They noticed weather constantly because weather affected everything: food, travel, safety, comfort. Imagine waking up on the fourth day of rain. The sky still gray, the ground still wet, the storm still continuing. You do not know if it will end tomorrow. You do not know if it will end next week. There is no forecast, only uncertainty. And uncertainty has always been one of humanity's greatest psychological challenges, which may explain why nearly every ancient culture developed stories about weather: rain gods, storm spirits, sky beings, divine forces controlling the clouds. Humans naturally seek explanations for things they cannot control. Few things were less controllable than weather. A hunter can improve their skills, a toolmaker can improve their craft, but nobody can negotiate with a storm, at least not directly. So people created stories, rituals, beliefs, explanations, and those explanations helped make uncertainty feel manageable. This pattern appears everywhere. Different continents, different cultures, different languages, the same basic idea. When weather controls life, weather becomes meaningful. Now think about something else. Boredom. Modern people often assume boredom is a recent problem, but boredom has probably existed for as long as humans have. The difference is how people responded to it. Today, boredom usually leads to screens. Entertainment arrives instantly. Ancient humans had no such option. When trapped by weather, they created entertainment: music, games, stories, crafts, decoration. Archaeologists repeatedly find evidence of artistic behavior among ancient populations: beads, carvings, paintings, musical instruments. These objects required time, a great deal of time, and storms may have provided some of it. A person sitting beneath shelter during days of rain has limited mobility, but they still have hands, they still have imagination, they still have curiosity. One of the oldest known flutes discovered in Europe required remarkable craftsmanship. Someone invested significant effort creating an object whose primary purpose was not survival. It was experience, it was expression, it was culture. Long periods of bad weather may have encouraged exactly this kind of activity, not because people intended to create civilization, because they needed something to do. Many of humanity's greatest developments may have emerged from moments of forced stillness. Now consider sleep. Rain changes sleep even today. The sound is calming for many people. Scientists believe rhythmic environmental sounds can influence relaxation and perceived safety. For ancient humans, rainfall may have created unusual sleeping conditions. Predators often move differently during storms. Visibility decreases, travel decreases. environmental noise increases. Some anthropologists have suggested that weather conditions influenced how secure people felt at night. A storm could be frightening, but it could also create a strange sense of protection. The world beyond the shelter disappeared behind a curtain of water. The familiar landscape became invisible. The group gathered closer together. The fire burned low, and people waited for morning, waited for clear skies, waited for the world to return. And eventually, it always did. The rain ended. The clouds broke apart. The sun returned. The ground began drying. People left their shelters. Tracks appeared. Animals emerged. Life resumed. But something important happened during those days of waiting. Humans spent time together. A lot of time together. More time talking. More time teaching. More time sharing information. And information is one of the most valuable resources our species has ever possessed. A child listening to stories during a storm might learn where food can be found, how animals behave, which plants are dangerous, who their ancestors were, what their group believed. Knowledge survived because people had opportunities to pass it on. Rain may have created some of those opportunities. A storm pauses movement, but it encourages communication. And communication changed everything. For 300,000 years, your ancestors lived with weather in a way most modern people never will. They did not escape it. They adapted to it. They built shelters, protected fires, shared stories, strengthened relationships, created art, passed down knowledge. And sometimes they simply sat and listened to the rain. Today, if a storm lasts several days, you barely notice. You move from your house to your car, from your car to your workplace. You remain separated from the weather almost completely. Your ancestors had no such barrier. When rain arrived, life changed, not permanently, but completely. And maybe that's the strangest part of all. For most of human history, weather wasn't background information. It was life itself. The storm determined what happened next. The storm shaped the day. The storm shaped the conversation. The storm shaped the story. And somewhere beneath a rocky shelter thousands of years ago, while rain fell outside and a fire crackled inside, a group of humans sat together passing the time. Not knowing they were creating culture, not knowing they were preserving knowledge, not knowing they were building the habits that would eventually lead to civilization. They were just waiting for the rain to stop. And in the process, they may have been doing something far more important. They may have been becoming human.